All right, awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us for this October BrainX Community Live 2025 event. Very excited to have you join us. And we have a very exciting featured presentation by Dr. Pawan Jindal, moderated by Dr. Maheshwari in a short time. But for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I just want to give you an overview of BrainX community. We started this platform where we can bring all the people who are interested for AI in healthcare for good around 7 years ago. And since then, we have this community that has grown on to be 7,000 plus members strong, 3,500 plus members just on a very active LinkedIn group. We have our own website, which serves as a repository of a whole host of content. So if you haven't been there, go to brainxai.org, and I'll go over that briefly. We do these monthly live sessions so that we can all learn from each other, sharing scientific information, sharing information about how somebody has developed a AI healthcare solution or implemented it. So learn from each other and grow together. So if you go to our website, you'll find there is a latest update section where you'll find the updates about some of the latest content. It might be a scientific paper. It might be about an upcoming meeting. You will find all those over. So check it out. We have the Connect segment, which hosts these event information about these events that we do on a monthly basis. And if you miss out, don't worry. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel where we post this. So this is being recorded, and you will find the recording on our YouTube channel if you want to share and go over it again, or if you miss a future one. As I mentioned, we have a very active LinkedIn channel where we share a lot of scientific information, scientific papers, a whole host of discussion. So please join us. It's a group called BrainX Community, and share the information and have an opportunity to collaborate with others. Uh, Going back to our web page, we have the Learn section on our website where we provide a curated list of publications. Uh, and it's important because nowadays there are so many publications. So we filter those and we post the ones or the link to those that are very sought after. You can filter on our website itself for the healthcare specialty that you're looking for. They are categorized so you can go through them. Everybody's looking for open source data sets. So we have the largest repository of links to open source data sets. These are the data sets for healthcare that you can use for your AI modeling, which require a DUA, and you can use it for your research work, but are open source. Again, these are available through the filterable options for different healthcare specialties. We also provide brief information so that you can screen through those and get access to the data set that you want to work on for your research and development work. We have our podcast series available through various channels where you can listen to stories of some of the developers, some of the researchers, some of the pioneers for AI and healthcare, and get inspired by that. And we have a great opportunity to connect with each other at meetings and conferences. So we provide a list of various upcoming conferences so that we can connect over there. You can showcase your work. You can go and join and learn from others at the meeting and conferences. These are conferences which are specific to AI and healthcare that we provide the listing for, and you can register through the link on our website itself. A couple of books that we have put out there, working with many of the collaborators, many of the members on this community recently. But more importantly, something that you joined us for today is this exciting presentation by Dr. Pawan Jindal, and it will be moderated by Dr. Kamal Maheshwari about how do I implement the AI model into our EHR. That's probably one of the very hot and burning questions, and hopefully we'll get insights from Dr. Jindal and Dr. Maheshwari. And learn from them, from their experiences too. So again, I'm going to not go through the entire introduction over here, but you can learn more about them and their work from our website. But I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Kamal Maheshwari to help moderate it and Dr. Jindal to go ahead and do the presentation.
Oh, thank you, Piyush. And thank you, everyone, especially Pawan, for taking the time out. He's a busy guy. A few things I would say is I know him for 3 decades. We did med school together. He chose a wiser path into the informatics world, and entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, multiple EHR companies, and now he's embarking on the latest. He's always on the latest of what's going on. And I think that's how he evolved over a period of time. And that shows in the latest thing, which he's going to talk about today. And the primary problem which we all are dealing with, and we have learned working in big organization to small, is that all good ideas in healthcare die with EHR integration problem. Either we cannot integrate, or we have a 2-year life cycle. I have multiple projects as a consultant when we were working with Epic at Cleveland Clinic. You have so many ideas, and now with the advent of AI in the last 2-3 years, it's just like crazy. So now the problem is, how do you integrate? How you integrate safely? And at some point of time, you have to get not only the credit for the idea, but also you have to monetize those platforms. So Pawan lives and breathes this world, and he's going to talk about it. So I'm giving over to Pawan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Piyush and Kamal, and really, really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone. And I'll start by saying the context is like the EHR integration is a much bigger problem. My goal today is not to share like some secret that it will just start working, but to share the experiences, the things that we know, and the technologies that are out there. I think it's one of those the chicken and the egg situations where there are not enough apps where they have created the demand versus the EHRs can keep avoiding having to do more things. But if there's one thing that AI is now enabling, is that it is actually creating a genuine need for and a genuine want for applications. And I think with the technologies that are available, that will become a lot more easier to kind of accelerate and bring them forward. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me make sure everyone can see it. If someone can confirm that the screen is visible.
Yes, we can. We can see
Awesome.
that.
Awesome. Okay. So I'll, go in there. I'll just say first is like just to, briefly introduce. So I'm a founder CEO of a company called Darena Health. But as, Kamal said, I'm actually currently working on a new startup that is called as Prompt Opinion. It's basically around building AI applications for healthcare agents and integrating it with EHR. I'm not going to bore you with what the details are. The goal here is to understand the problem. But as we are going through it, I'll cover some of the things, kind of how we are approaching it and some of the experiences, some of the challenges that we are seeing in the market. So overview of the agenda, the way I divided is like I wanted to kind of make sure we have a base platform, before we jump into the technology. So I'm going to spend very fast, going through it through just the overall opportunity of generative AI in healthcare, what we are seeing, where it is used, and kind of aligning with some of the terms. There is a lot of buzzwords right now. I'm not claiming that we know what the right words are. The goal here is to make sure that as we are talking through some of the things, we can have a baseline to work with. So the first two slides are really all about, the first two sections are really about kind of, having a consensus to work around. FHIR and Smart on FHIR are two standards that if you're working in healthcare, you're going to run into, especially if you're talking EHR integrations. They are not perfect, but they are, kind of one of the only options sometimes, or the better options. So I'm going to go through probably the fastest ever crash course possible through them, just to kind of make sure, we can connect. And if there's someone that has not heard about FHIR, you can at least have the basics. And then we will get into the main section, talking about what MCP is, because in my opinion, that is becoming basically the go-to standard of integrating LLMs or AI apps into anything. EHR being one of them. And then I also wanted to give a little peek into some of the things that we are hearing in the market now, especially around A2A, where this whole idea about multi-agents is becoming more and more common. So again, I know that's a lot to cover. I will basically go into like go a little faster on some of the sections so that we can at least have it more complete. But happy to kind of take questions at the end. Also, like if we want to do follow-ups or anything, to go from there. So let's go start with. So I'm going to start with the very high level of the opportunity. And I'll just say again, it's like, why do we need AI in healthcare? Where is the demand? Where is it coming from? And in my opinion, or the experiences or the use cases that I've, basically heard is it's really across three main use cases that are kind of, getting collided. One is healthcare is one place where there is a lot of evidence, right? The guidelines, the research are constantly being updated. We know ways to, we need ways to basically do it. And AI is really good at managing large amount of data. On one side, the evidence is increasing. On the other side, the patient data is increasing. And this is both the data that is generated by the patient as well as being generated from other places. So, with all that data, there is really a need to kind of see how we can, manage it, better. And then the last, but probably like definitely not the least, is that healthcare by default has a lot of unstructured data. And this is where, generative AI is really good at or has shown the most promise. So this is again, kind of why it becomes really important as we kind of, look into some of the AI in healthcare use cases, what is really, pushing those use cases. Just to put it into a little more context, here is a diagram, and this is by no means exhaustive, but it shows many of the different examples of generative AI where there are companies or organizations implementing it, whether from a clinician side or from a patient side, where this is being used today. Every single bubble that you see in here is basically at least one, if not multiple companies that are building it, whether it is around summarization, whether it is at clinical decision support, something that probably everyone has heard by now is ambient, listening. But there's other like trials matching, patient education, generating referrals, background jobs to managing population health. And also on the patient side, right? I mean, we've heard now is that used to be like people coming with their Google symptoms. Now they're coming in with, hey, ChatGPT told me I'm dying. I need you to confirm it. That is a real thing. I mean, it's happening. It's like, becoming more and more clear. And then people are actually calling it the second opinion, or it's the first, between the first and the second opinion. Is there a new opinion that is called the AI opinion? And it all coming together. And again, as I said, the idea of this is to, and I don't think I need to preach to this group, here, but like generative AI is real. I mean, it's not as real as, hey, we are going to get replaced by, AI. But there is very good use cases that are being discussed and that are being implemented. And what we need to kind of figure out, or what we need to discuss in here for the rest of the call, is like, how do these cases, how are many of these use cases being implemented, being integrated at point of care or outside point of care, but ultimately getting the data together. So before we go into that, I wanted to just do a little bit of a session to do some terminology alignment. That way, we are kind of talking the same words. So I'm going to go through some of the very basic words that I assume everyone knows, but it helps to kind of connect it. So the first thing is, we are talking of generative AI. Generative AI is different from predictive AI. Again, like, very high level. Predictive AI is more deterministic. Generative AI by definition is more of generating new data, but it's not really new. I mean, you have heard all of that, but like the key thing that we are talking about here is that we are building large language models. We are building apps based on that. And how do they basically, come together? So the focus right now is generative AI. Most of the things that I'll be talking here do apply to predictive AI too, but, just kind of making sure. The second thing that I want to kind of make sure, and this is the most common confusion when I'm talking to, especially someone in clinical, non-technical, we run into, is like a difference between an app and an LLM. So LLM is the model, the backend, the knowledge base that is, kind of driving it, the big database, some people call it. And then the app is something that you are using to interact with that LLM. And this becomes important as we talk about integrating apps with, EHR. So just kind of, understanding that when we are talking about an app, it's something that you are using to interact with the LLM versus the LLM itself. And then I'm going to bring the big one, that is the buzzword, and that is the word agent. I mean, this has, all the meanings that are going on in the market right now. And I don't want to have I just says like, don't have, analysis paralysis on the terminology. Really, the simple way to define the agent is that it is an app that can basically do some kind of decision making using some tools. And I know that is still very, very abstract, but we are going to actually see some of this, with some examples, and hopefully that will become clear, especially as we try to, talk about integrations. And then I wanted to include like a fourth word because this became pretty big in the last week or 10 days because there was an announcement for OpenAI where they have now built a new product that allows you to go and create workflows. And they call it agentic workflows. And there is now a lot of confusion. Is like, what is workflow? What is agent? Can agent do the workflows? Again, I mean, like at a very semantically correct definition. Another thing is like, workflows are basically what are if-else statements. They follow predetermined rules. That's a good, safe definition to go with. And agents are, less deterministic. They are basically, they work on prompts. They are getting better and better. There is more and more structured output data, but that is kind of a little bit. And when you talk about agentic workflows, you're talking of agents kind of, helping you make that decision and then, kind of connecting it together. So again, very base key terms. And then there's one more that is important as we go through it. And again, this is where it will really get tricky because I'm going to talk about some concepts that we're going to discuss later, but just trust me, I think they will all come together because I can't introduce context engineering without talking the rest of the things. So you will hear this a lot, especially as we start building agents and apps. What is context engineering? So let's start with what context engineering is not, or what was before is the prompt engineering. So this is a typical way how we look at, chat GPT or any application is to say that, you give it a prompt. The prompt is a combination of a system prompt, a chat history, your actual prompts and everything. It goes to an LLM. The LLM basically gives back a response, and that response is used by a human to make decisions, to act, to do whatever. Right? This is how we knew, world was when chat GPT came out. Okay, then it started improving more and more. And one of the first technologies that came out, there was something called as RAG. RAG basically was that to say that, you are giving some more data into your LLM that is not in the prompt, but coming out from some other database, and that is being used to, improve the responses. Okay, and then the next layer kind of came out is, which we will talk a lot about, what is called as MCP. And in that case was that MCP basically means that the LLM is now going and on the fly, dynamically basically getting some data, doing some other things, whether from the EHR, whether from other sources. And again, we'll see examples of this, basically doing it. And then like kind of where we are today, or like a lot of things that are happening, now is that the LLM actually not just getting the data, but also acting on it. So this is kind of, like the overall scope of where we are. And again, context engineering is basically this middle layer, if you want to call it, kind of how it kind of, basically works. And the core idea there is to give the LLM more and more context for it to do its work. It's not anything more complicated than that. We'll talk about the tools and other things that we use it to do it, but that's really, what context engineering is about. One like the other thing that we want to hear a lot, and I think it helps to clarify is, how new technologies always changes the terminology. What exactly is a tool? You will hear this a lot when we are using, integrations. So again, I mean, a tool is nothing. If you know APIs, if you know basically functions, if you know methods, that is basically what it is. It is the same thing that is in, kind of in a fancy way to say in AI. Here are some examples of tools, and we will see how all of them kind of play into different ways. A tool can be as simple as get the current date and time. Remember, because LLMs don't know where they are, right? They have been trained at a point of time. A tool could be read from a database, get me the patient data. A tool could be a logic, a medical calculator or anything. A tool could be something that acts on something or writes to a database. The key difference when we talk about tools in the AI context is that how we have changed our concept of invoking these tools, where you are not now going to Postman or going to an application and calling the API. You are actually using your natural language to say, hey, go get me this patient data. And the AI is smart enough to invoke that tool by converting natural language into that. So keep that concept in mind, one of the core concepts around, kind of what tools are and how they work. So all of these kind of base terminologies to kind of bringing tool, what the context, what the other things is, really comes down to is like, okay, how does this all play into what we call as agents? And I have created this kind of a model where we use it for explaining for, many people, especially on the non-technical people, because they hear it is like, oh, does it mean if I'm building an app or I'm building an agent, I just need to implement chat GPT in my organization? Or is it basically, the model? So the one way to look at it is like, okay, if you see or if you feel that, okay, the model is at the center of, an agent, it's the brain, what it does. And typically the only layer we see it is like an interface layer, right? This could be the UI, this could be some way, you are interacting with it. But the true way an agent works, or like more than what, a model works, is to understand the layers that go below it. And those are kind of starts from something called as grounding. Grounding basically is not the same thing as, fine tuning a model. The idea there is that you have a model, you are going to use it in some healthcare use case. How are you going to make sure that you are going to make some of that data, or the some of the model that that data uses, or data that that model uses, embedded into some evidence-based, documentation. The other thing is basically that we will talk a lot here about is how do you get it access to real-time data, and then basically how do you give it other tools, all the ones that we talked about, before, is to say that the model can do a lot of things. In my opinion, and in all the discussions that I've been having, the model along with these tools is typically how you will perceive an agent or an app. It is really the difference what makes it between chat gpt and the tools, these different categories of tools that kind of define it. But then again, like, the most important thing is that the app is not the end of it. What you need is a layer above that, and that is how do you bring that app into the EHR. If you look at the AI apps and the agents this way, you will be able to, anytime you're working on an idea, you're working on a use case, you will be able to break it down into what is the part of the app, what is the part of the LLM. But ultimately everything has to flow into that top level, where is like, where does the workflow kind of fit in? And again, we'll see some use cases of it. But again, the last part of it that I say here is that something that becomes important for generative AI is one layer also in between, which is basically being called as the guardrails. And again, we won't go into the details of what guardrails are implementation. There are some other videos and other things we are doing it. But again, I mean, the idea of this slide is to help you kind of orient yourself to an architecture or to a framework, to say, if I'm building an app, whether it is an EHR app, a patient app, or whatever app, every app will ultimately kind of somehow layer into these layers, how it goes from the model downward into the tools and upward into actually being integrated into an application. Hopefully that was, I know a lot, but like that gives a basic idea about, the terminology. Before I go into the crash course, Piyush, any key question I need to address? Looking good?
No, go ahead. We'll do that at the end.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So as I said, again, I am not going to do justice to covering HL7, but I wanted to just make sure that we cover the basics. So this is going to be a really, really fast course. My apologies if, this is the first time you are hearing about HL7 file, but it is important to understand the integration. So what is HL7 Fire, right? HL7 Fire is a way to standardize healthcare data. Okay, the way I always describe it is like, think about like the nouns in healthcare. A patient, things that you can give a name, things you can describe it. Those things are known as resources in healthcare, and that is how you basically go and structure a patient, a condition, an allergy, so that we all can kind of standardize the data. The reason fire is because it is a very easy way to get started on it. What I mean by that is that the big thing about fire is that there is nothing really big about it if you talk about to any other industry. It is based on the standards that are very, very common in other industry like REST APIs and other thing. And what it does is it really democratizes, the healthcare development. That's what makes it easier for people from outside to come and build healthcare apps and, connect it. And then the last thing, and we will go a little deeper into this, is there is a concept of a smart on fire. Smart on fire is a separate standard from fire, but it is used to basically connect fire apps with EHR. We're going to go into that detail in a minute, so I'm going to come back to that. Here is the website of fire. If you want to go and look at all the different kind of resources, it's a very, very comprehensive list of resources, how they have made sure, they have covered it. And then I wanted to just high level go through some of the limitations of fire, that if you start working or if you're working, you will know it. And I want to openly acknowledge it. The first is that, although fire is a standard, but there are many, many variations of fire, unfortunately, within our country, across EHRs, across countries. It's getting better and better, but there are different variations that vendor implementations implement. There's nothing we can do about it. There are mappers and other things, but it is better than not having any standard at all. The second thing is that this is a common issue you will hear, is that fire is not very, very granular. So if you are working some very specific use cases, especially when you go into research, it starts getting tricky. Yes, there are extensions, there are other ways to work around it, but that's where you start losing the standard. And then the third is that we often run into a lot is that people will say, oh my God, I can't use fire to write data. That is not a limitation of fire. That is a limitation of an EHR or someone that is implementing it. And that becomes important is when we talk about how and when you want to use fire, what you can use it. But that's not really a limitation of fire. The last thing I want to just talk about fire is that, we talked about that, the main use case for AI is using unstructured data. But then we always pivot to, hey, fire is really good at using through AI. There has been so much training of LLMs on fire that, LLMs, even the general LLMs are very, very good at handling fire. However, I want to know is that if you're building an app, which again, most of the apps that we are building today are based on fire, it does not stop you from using unstructured data. And actually, there is a thing called within Fire, a document reference resource, which is basically to manage unstructured data. And like most of the use cases, if you're doing clinical decision support, will require you pulling something from EHR, and you will be running into this resource called document reference that you can extract it. It's like PDFs, JPEGs, images, and other things. They also provide a lot of metadata with it. So you can actually see, hey, I want to only see documents of this type. And there are multiple ways to actually get that document out. So, as you use Fire, it will basically just kind of keep it in mind that Fire does not restrict you to only structured data. If your use case, if you're using LLM, you're building an application around unstructured data or notes and other things, especially if you're using Epic or Cerner today, or most of the EHRs, it allows you that way to get that data through document references. Okay, last part of the standard, smart on fire. So as I said, right, fire is the standard for managing the data. Smart on fire is where we really start talking about how do we get my apps into the EHR. So smart on fire, if you didn't know, it actually is an acronym. It stands for what is written in there. I'm not going to try to read it, but the idea there is it's not just like a smartphone. It is a standard that was built with the idea behind that you can develop an app once and it will work with any EHR. That was the vision. That is the vision. How much is it there? There's always, those debates. But our idea, our goal here is to understand what does the standard provide? What does it do today? So that way, as you are looking into the apps, you can kind of, make your decision. So again, I'll go through the high level of what the smart app and the types are. So the basic thing is that you have to understand there are two types of smart flows or smart app flows. One is that you are actually having as a user. The other is using as a system, backend. So system means there is no user involved. The permissions when it works in a system app is based on what is called as scopes. So you build a system app and you are going to say, I want to get all the data from the EHR and I'm basically going to get it, at this level. So the key thing to here is that if you are building an application that is something like a population health and you want to integrate with the EHR, you don't need it at point of care. You can build it based on that scopes. it requires a one-time approval when it is approved at the EHR, and then no more consent is required. Okay, if you are building a user app, that is basically an app that is used from the EHR that will actually use your app to connect to the EHR. It is obviously based on the permissions of the user, and because the user is using your app, it will actually make you go through a process of kind of consenting to it. Okay, so the user app itself, there are three different ways to integrate a user app in an EHR. Okay, and these words are actually technical words. So when we say standalone launch or EHR launch, these are the two main ones that you will mostly interact with. These are ways how you actually interact with an app. And then, there is a third way to do a CDS hooks too. So let me go through all three of them very quickly. So what does a standalone launch means? Let's say you are a clinician, you are working in your EHR, you have a patient open, okay, and your app has been deployed as a standalone app. What you need to do is you are going to go to a separate application. This could be on your phone, this could be a browser, this could be a tablet. The key thing in here is you are leaving the EHR, you are going into that application, you are going to search for the patient, and then your app, whatever that app does, is basically going to display it. So this is kind of the flow of what is called as a standalone launch in a Smart on Fire, launch. What are the pros of a standalone app? It is really, really quick. You don't need to talk to the EHR much. I mean, it is like for Epic, it is actually pretty self-service. You can go to their portal, create it, connecting. The user does not need to remember any more passwords, anything. And there is no real dependence in your EHR, assuming that the EHR supports it, which most of the EHRs, at least in US, do. The cons of this approach is that it is basically complete lack of context and workflow. So if I am a clinician, I am in a patient chart, I am basically stepping out of my EHR, going into a separate app, doing all of that, bringing in there and doing it. So if this use case is around an EHR context, you have completely broken the workflow. You have made the clinician kind of get out of the workflow. Again, depending on the app, it could be that it is okay, but that's something to keep in mind. Second thing is the EHR launch. So this is the second flow, which basically starts. So how does that work is, I am a clinician, I am in the EHR, okay? I will see a button appear on the patient chart. So in Epic, it actually appears like a tab. In Cerner, there are different ways it appears on the side and other ways. But the idea there is that I am a clinician working in an EHR and I see a button or a way to launch this. You launch it, and in one click, you basically have that app open right there. So you never have to leave the screen. You don't go out there. You basically are just working there and you see it. So again, the pros should be obvious. The user, like it's basically context aware. It knows what patient it is. It even knows what encounter it is. Depending on the encounter, you can actually show them specific guidelines, specific whatever your app does, based on the encounter that the user was in, and it provides a better workflow. The limitations of that is again that you are kind of now dependent on the EHR user interface. Yes, they use an iframe, they basically render the app, but there has been many issues where like as the app starts kind of growing, it becomes clobbered. It's very difficult to kind of browse it, and then the experience kind of goes down. But again, in my experience and the maximum kind of usability that we have seen, especially if it is point of care or clinical decision support apps, including AI apps, they will always have some component of an EHR launch. The third one that we are going to like the flow that is available there is CDS hooks. This works a little differently. So the idea there is that I am in the EHR, I'm looking at a patient chart, and behind the scenes, the EHR is making some calls to my app. And then it will decide that if there is something I want to show for that patient. If it is, it will make a button appear. So there's not always buttons, and I click on that button and it launches an app. But then the idea there is that if it is a different workflow, there might be a different button that appears, and I go and launch it, and then it can launch a different app. So it kind of addresses the issues of the EHR launch where there can be an app overload or other thing, but it gives you the idea to kind of have more context and sensitive there, so that way you can kind of manage it. CDS hooks is very commonly used in prescriptions where you can get information about drugs, and kind of have that suggestions kind of available within the EHR. Again, really high level pros should be obvious is that, this is the best workflow possible, provides you alert at the point of care so that, you can actually see it. The downside of this is that this is a very, very complex integration. Almost no EHR supported. There's only a couple of EHRs in US that actually are supporting it. Even then, it is a very flaky integration. It requires a lot of testing, which again, the sandboxes and others are not available. But if possible, CDS hooks is the best way to do it. And honestly, there's the better way to do that is to the CDS hooks with EHR launch, which basically what it means is that the app button appears, but then when it launches, you actually have the patient context and everything else, and you can all combine it together. So the question obviously always is like, okay, out of all of these, which is the best one? I hate to give the consultant answer, but it is like it depends. And the answer there is it depends on, kind of what you are working on. So if you are building an app that you're only targeting towards, some outpatient EHR, and that EHR doesn't support CDS hooks, no point even going down that path, right? Also depends on like kind of the workflow and permissions. If you're building a population health app, maybe the system app is good. Don't even worry about the other flows. And obviously all of that combining with the application use case. So again, I mean, we can discuss like, what these are. There's not a one size fits all. The goal here is to know all the different options, work on your solution, and then kind of, work from it. Okay. So now we are going to go into my opinion, the star of the show, or that is the main thing what we talk about, or you'll hear a lot about is, in the AI world, which is the model context protocol. So what we talked so far was the standards that are healthcare specific. Model context protocol is the standard that is being used to integrate with LLMs in the industry, right? So again, very high level, what does it mean and kind of what it is? So it is an open standard, means that anyone can do it. There is no proprietary, like, which enables an LLM to connect to data sources. Okay. What do I mean by that? I mean, like, it's basically all about that, there is an LLM and the LLM wants to do something, connect with it. And that standard basically allows you to do it. The definition that we saw before about tools, the simplest way to visualize is that MCP or MCP server is a collection of tools. If you want to oversimplify it and kind of see it how it really works. So here is a very, very simple example of assuming that you have a clinician that is using an app, any Smart on Fire app, any kind of app, and then the app is basically trying to connect to LLM. The app can connect to the EHR using MCP server. Okay, so reason I have this dotted line in here is because there is a very common conception or a concern that the LLM is now connecting directly to my EHR. That is not how it actually works behind the scenes. The core idea in here is that MCP is a standard that you will embed in your app, and it is very common with the EHR apps that we are building that will allow you to connect it to the EHR. And we'll look at some of the flows, how it works. But I want to kind of make sure is from this slide is that you keep in mind is that it is not actually a direct connection. It perceives that way. Okay. I have a slide where I actually go into the workflow in detail in here. I'm going to actually skip this, but let me just, in the interest of time, I wanted to just make sure we have it, but okay, hold on. Let me just kind of do this. What I wanted to just show in here was to make sure that you really, really get this point across, because this is something that will come up in security a lot. If you're building an EHR app, is that the way the flow works when you're using an app with an MCP server is that the LLM is never actually calling the MCP server directly. It is always going through the app, which means that the security and everything is managed at the app level. This becomes very important as you discuss the use cases, as you implement the Smart on Fire workflows or anything. Always remember that, MCP doesn't mean that, you are kind of giving your control to the LLM. You still will have that control again, and or the app has that control, and it always goes through that. Okay. One last thing, basically, before we leave, the EHR, the MCP, and the overall concept in here is that to understand, again, to reinforce what I said before, MCP is not only for reading, MCP is also for acting, for making changes. This is why, it's like, okay, don't show me something I can't do anything about. Most of the apps are actionable. So it becomes really, really important to say that, when you're using your app, if your app is leveraging MCP, it really will ultimately, help you kind of connect it and bring it all together. Okay, so we talked about Fire, we talked about the core, we talked about MCP. How do we bring all of this together for EHR integration, which is the main goal of this presentation, right? So let's just talk about the different options, different ways, kind of how you can use MCP and Fire to connect. So there are four main ways. Again, that's like, kind of how we approach it. Four different ways in which we see the market basically adopting. The top two ways are not the ways where, you don't basically like not as an app developer, but let's just go through one by one, right? Okay, so the first way is that let's just say you want to build an LLM based app, or the EHR wants to build it. What the EHR can do is they can just build the app, they can connect it with the LLM, and they just say, here is the app to their users, and the users have to use that app. This is something that is already happening, unfortunately, but this is what is, really locking the whole innovation by the EHR and every EHR going on their own path. I hope this doesn't go too much, because then every EHR will be building their own apps, but this is something that is happening in the market with the EHRs restricting outside kind of access. Okay, there is a second scenario in here, which is the ideal scenario, but it is not happening, but we hope it will happen, which is basically that the EHR will go and say that I am going to make an MCP server available. Then if you or I or anyone is building an app, we can basically build those apps that connect with those MCP server. This gives us the maximum flexibility, assuming that those MCP servers are active, like are good, and then we can go and use our own LLM, use our apps, and clinicians can get the best value out of it. And again, all these use cases work with the Smart on Fire app scenarios that we talked about. Okay, the bottom two options are where we are saying is that the EHR has basically said, I don't want to do anything about AI, or, like basically they are giving you options to work on your own. So this option is the one that I think is the most like, innovation, like, kind of leading. So what is happening in this case is that the EHR has the Fire interface, which gets better and better, but then the app developers are building their own MCP servers, and then those MCP servers are being used in different kinds of apps. This is something that we are approaching. This is something that we are seeing in the market being done a lot. We think there will be independent MCP servers more and more. This is probably the best use case if you're building an app at point of care where you want to connect it. And then the fourth case, the last one, which basically we want to talk about here is like, okay, if you are building a population health app, you don't care too much about the point of care or anything. What you can do is use another standard using system app where you export all the data from the EHR, bringing into another source, and then you are not restricted by anything. Again, this is another use case that is very commonly being used, especially on my other Darena Health side, where we work with a lot of customers that actually provide Fire servers. They are exporting the data, then running analytics and everything, and kind of doing it all together. So a very common use case, option 3 and 4, that is all kind of used for different EHR integration options. So again, those were basically 4 different options using Fire and MCP. Again, the key here is to understand that is not the only options. There are also other ways. People are using screen scrapings, people are using other ways. But I mean, these are the 4, like these are the main options or the standards that we are seeing in the market being adopted, people that we are working with, the way we are approaching it. I wanted to really quickly also just talk about another standard that is really coming up, which is called as agent to agent, because a lot of people are getting confused about that. Agent to agent means that we don't need MCP anymore. And I wanted to just make sure that everyone understands that, the A2A standard is not a replacement of MCP. It is actually something that is adding something to MCP, and they work very, well together. A2A is a standard that was done by Google. I've heard versions of it like Google was feeling left behind and they came out with this to replace MCP. No, it is nothing like that. It is actually a very complementary standard. And I'll give you a very simple example to understand where do you decide versus A2A versus MCP. So let's just say you have a very good app that is integrated with the EHR, working with the MCP server, and you are working on it. And then you want to add a new feature. This is a use case that we have actually worked on, where you say, I want to be able to, within my chat, search for clinical trials. I want to search as like, hey, is this patient eligible for a clinical trial? Okay, what will you do? I mean, the idea will be like, okay, let's just build an MCP server on the trial, and then I can go and, basically connect to it. And that is absolutely okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But there's another way to do it is like, that instead of building that MCP server, you can actually build a separate app, where there is an agent and everything that is connected to that MCP server. And then you can basically connect these two, right? And the question there will be like, why the hell are you making it overcomplicated, right? It's like, okay, we have the MCP servers. Let's just keep going down. What is the advantage of going from single to multiple agents? So this is where, you have to kind of understand is like, demos are good when we are doing the tools. But as you start giving more and more tools to the LLM, it will start getting confused, right? It is like only a limit to which you can tell LLM. I mean, they also kind of work that way. So the more specialization you can do, the better it is, right? So basically giving tools the specialization, giving tools, that separation helps. And that's why that A2A has a very special role other than MCP. The other thing that most people don't realize during demos, but it becomes very quickly issue is that cost control. If you are building a mini agent, that is to say, hey, just make sure there is no PHI in it. You can have an MCP tool that is running with GPT-5, but you could run a very small model to do that, and the cost could be cut by 100 times if you build it into separate agents. These are use cases that we have seen it is like how the cost really comes down if we broke the same use case into two agents and then connect them, because now you can use a very like a small language model for one agent versus the main model can maintain the other one. And then the last thing in here is that we'll see a lot of this happening is organizational separation. Maybe clinicaltrials.gov will come up with their own agent that is available, or like most of the payer scenarios where we are seeing is that they might provide their own agents and you can only interact with them. They might not give you access to the policies through MCP because they want to keep that control, and you will see that, and you will need to kind of use A2A in your app to kind of do it. Again, I don't have like enough time to kind of cover it all, but like we did a lot of demos around this. We are also building some new demos. So if this is something you are interested in, I'll share the link here where we've actually shown A2A working. This is not like a future vision or kind of something. This is actually something that is happening and can you can use it today. The standard is there, everything else is there. Okay, so wrap up, really last 3 slides. So the first thing is I want to kind of just have this concept kind of just summarized everything in here is that before ChatGPT, you wanted an app, you use tools to get to the data. ChatGPT introduced this concept of I can chat. So the first way to do that is RAG, okay, that we basically talked about. And then, basically the MCPs, which allows you to make decisions, and A2A is where you basically get different LLMs kind of talking to each other and then connecting them. I want to kind of make sure is like, everything we are talking about here is assuming the models is good. I didn't talk anything about evaluation of models and validation. I think this community knows a lot more than I do on that one. I'm more on the the connecting side, but we have to keep that in mind. The security implementations, don't get the demos, get in there. There's already kind of talks out happening around there how the PHI is leaking. The standards have built the security in it, but you need to make sure as you're building the apps, you are doing it. And then again, something debatable is like there's a lot of open third-party certification and trust frameworks kind of coming up. Keep an eye on that. I'm not going to talk good or bad or other thing. It's very political right now. So we'll just say you need to probably know this. Piyush is smiling. I know which one. So and then the last step in there, I'll just say is like again, AI is new. Every one of us is learning it. I think there's only very few people that really know it. They have already been taken by the big ones, but like keep learning and exploring. As we are learning, we are doing a lot of sessions and everything's together with building agents. There is a product update that we are launching. I'm going to put a shameless plug of Prompt Opinion, where we can actually decide how you build agents and how you can connect different scenarios. So if you're interested, definitely connect with it. And I'm also working with Piyush and Mahesh to see how we can work closely with BrainX. And then, again, reach out to me or anyone from our team if, it's something interests you, and, we can do it. With that, I think I'm over my time, but I'll pause there.
Oh, no. I wish we had a lot of time and we can continue to talk about all these things. So Pawan, thanks a lot about giving from basics to the current options for innovation in this area. A lot of our groups are academics and they have a lot of ideas. They help a lot of companies in different ways and some ground research, but ultimately building apps and actually using, which helps patient both in clinical care and research is the key. Because anything, we cannot keep writing papers about these things, and we have to
Absolutely.
build products about it. I'll start with a couple of questions regarding. I'll take the MCP because that's the word, because this has come from Anthropic, right? And there's a Chat GPT, OpenAI world, which are taking the LLMs in a different ways, and you don't see that even if the MCP is a open source and widely used, compared to the way ChatGPT or OpenAI building product in a sequential questions, right? So it is kind of a inherent two versions of AI which are being built, Anthropic led versus ChatGPT led.
So that's a great question, Kamal. And just to clear is like, MCP was built by Anthropic, but it is pretty open. And to prove that, the whole announcement that came from OpenAI in their workflow, you can actually build MCP within it. They fully support MCP. So if you are doing anything in AI, building any AI, MCP has already won the wars, because everyone, Microsoft, OpenAI, like Google, all of the big ones, even Grok, like all of them are supporting them. So we can pretty much like kind of ignore the fact that MCP is being managed by Anthropic, but they have pretty much thrown it into the open source, and it's right at this point, it's really a community. Absolutely.
Perfect. And the second question, and then I'll open to rest the people, is with regards to how we are building applications and everything, and security frameworks and all the stuff, they come into play a lot, right? And obviously these over a period of time gonna get decided by both the regulatory people and the academic community, right? With regards to, I mean, do you see, you mentioned that you don't want to get into the details, but I think that becomes the biggest thing. So ultimately, when as let's say the large top 10 organizations, right? They are predominantly using Epic as a primary thing. Let's take that also thing. Most of the innovations, let's say, coming out from there. Do you think those organizations should push Epic and other people to say that open this thing to MCP servers or build MCP server which other can connect it? Or do you think these discussions are already happening, or you see some change in this area?
Good. So I can speak from like without naming the source, because again, there's been a lot of discussions in there. So discussions are happening in the way not to kind of that EHR is building an MCP server, but making the APIs or the Fire APIs more and more available. That pressure is there at Epic and everyone else. And there are lots and lots of MCP servers being built. That's kind of what we are working on. We are working with the committee. We have open source a lot of code to build it, because the MCP is kind of the glue between any EHR and this, right? So because it will be reusable. I think that's kind of what I said at the start is like, like before I say the BC area, before ChatGPT, it was very difficult for EHRs to move to or make them do anything, because there was no genuine demand, right? It's like if someone said, I want to build this, Epic or someone will go build that feature. The pace of innovation, the pace of new apps that are being built right now is faster than any EHR, including the big ones, can do. So it is definitely happening. Epic just recently had their open developer conference, in person at their campus. I attended it. I can again, speak to that it was a very encouraging thing to see what all they are doing to make the developers open. So I think we are definitely moving towards a demand cycle that is going to increase it, and it will get better. It's not perfect, but it's getting better.
Perfect. So in short, like I think everybody, all stakeholders are moving towards this framework, which we are talking about, right? Between LLMs, then MCPs to connectivity, and A to A to different MCP servers. And ultimately, it is the information exchange which we're going to bring the value, like how you concoct the information and use it the best.
Exactly.
I think that'll be the key going forward, and how do we hopefully we're going to see it. And so in short, I think in summary, from my take home message would be that in a way that you build applications on LLM-based products. You have to figure out your own way of validation and security and other things, but you can use MCP servers to do them and do multiple both actions and information exchange. Let me put it this way, right?
Exactly.
And you can strive to build your own that give you some independence, and then connect those servers whenever these things are available. Or you can build the MCP server, which are calling the APIs to the EHRs and bringing information if somebody lets you do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And Kamal, just to kind of add to it, the way we are seeing the market is, and which is very encouraging, is people are building apps which have their built-in MCP server, but people are building MCP servers and making them available to app developers. So that's a good sign for the economy, because now you're seeing is companies that are investing in just building MCP servers that can be used by app developers. So the app developer will not need to know anything. They will only be talking to an LLM and giving it the connection, and you can kind of go from there.
Okay, perfect. I hope you're building one of them. But anyways, please reach out to Pawan at the Darena Solutions or Prompt Opinion for any further questions. He's also on LinkedIn. You can reach out to us, or myself, or Piyush, or BrainX. We can connect it. But I think this is a missing link here for all the people who are striving for innovation in this area for patient care and research. So Piyush.
Yeah, thank you, Kamal, and thank you, Pawan. That was so exciting. I know it's hard to do it in such a short period of time. It was just amazing to learn at least the basics of some of these concepts. So thank you for laying it out. I actually had a question too. So we talked about, and I did put in the chat about the link to MCP servers, server resources that are there through Anthropic. But is there a particular place where you can find ones that are specific to EHR use cases?
Yeah, so there are multiple directories kind of popping up, which are for like common tools like, Slack or Teams or, GitHubs or other things. EHRs haven't started publishing, but there are open source ones. So if you just go Google like MCP Fire, and we have one too, I can share one too that we have built it. Like we basically built some base code where anyone can go and build it. So it is like very, very common now building Fire and MCP servers and connecting for healthcare. So no EHR has officially released their MCP server as far as I know, but it is very, very easy. The code is available. There's multiple companies that are building it and making it available.
So I did put in the web link to Prompt Opinion in the chat. So for those who are looking for that, they can hopefully go to your website and they can get more information. We will also post more information on LinkedIn after this video for this presentation is done, so that you can gain from that and you can follow up on that. So again, thank you, Pawan. Thank you, Kamal, for this awesome session. Please continue to stay tuned. Please join us and follow us on BrainX community through our website, brainxai.org, through our LinkedIn channel called BrainX Community. And if you're looking to get the video of this presentation, subscribe our YouTube channel, and also you'll get those for the upcoming sessions. So, Pawan, we'll have to bring you back for more, as this is a very exciting work.
I can talk about this all day. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Take care, guys. Thank you.